Leo, you want to talk a little bit about asset structure and how we kind of put our, LLCs and how we hold our properties?
Sure. So, like we mentioned, kind of in the earlier part of the webinar, when you're buying with commercial financing, right, whether it's a hard money lender or a commercial bank, you can't close on your name, right? You have to close with an LLC. So the way we actually do it is we actually have one main entity we call our operating entity, right? And that's the one at the very top. And underneath that, then we open individual individual LLCs or limited liability companies for each acquisition, right? So you can see if you start on the left of the slide, if we are buying commercial property on 123 Main Street, we're going to open a new LLC and close on that deal with 123 Main Street LLC. Now, let's say the reason why we do that, that property is now that property is now owned by that LLC, which is owned by us. And let's say we actually brought in a private money lender who said, hey, I'm going to give you the money, but I want to own, let's say, 30% of the building. Great. So all of a sudden, I can have Willie, and I can have our money lender who lent us the money all own a piece of that company that owns the property. So it allows us to structure individual agreements for each different property we buy, right? Now, let's say we go to the middle one and we buy residential rental number 1. And on that property, let's say we get another lender, but let's say we only give them 20% on that. That's great. So we open a new LLC. Let's say it's 456 Main Street. And again, it's the same thing. We can structure it differently where that lender owns only 20%. And then, and then me and Willie will own the rest. And so on, right? So each property is owned by its own LLC. And the other advantage of this too is you can't really what we call mingle. You can't mingle in between properties, right? It allows us to kind of keep the books clean, if you will, between all of our different projects. Each project has its own accounting. If one project takes a little bit of a hit for some reason, we obviously don't want it to impact another company or another project, right? It allows us to essentially keep each project very clean. It allows us to kind of run an organized business.
Yep, absolutely. And so the other thing is the asset protection side of it, right? So let's say hypothetically, this is the way we're set up. And this may seem really complex to some people, but it's really not. I mean, this is something that, it's just one more step. It's you own the LLC. And if you look at this structure, the holding company LLC up top could just be you. You could take that out and that could be you. And then you can own the LLC 1, LLC 2, LLC 3. The reason you want to do this versus holding everything in that holding company, in addition to what Lior said, is let's say hypothetically somebody slips and falls at your commercial property number 1. If you hold everything into that holding company, then any attorney who's passed the bar is going to sue you for everything within that holding company, right? They basically said, I'm going to go after all of your assets. But your assets on this one are separated. You have limited liability just to that commercial property just within that LLC. They could not attack property 2 and property 3 in a perfect scenario, right? So if you have, let's say Lior and I own the commercial property in LLC number 1. My wife and I own the property in LLC number 2, and then it's a friend and I in LLC number 3. If somebody slips and falls and hurts themselves and tries to go after me or me and Lior in property number 1, my wife is going to say, and my friend is going to say, that has nothing to do with us. We shouldn't have to answer to that. You would have to answer to that if you held everything into one LLC at the holding company, but they will not, since they are a separate entity with a separate tax ID. And Lior had mentioned keeping your books completely separate. If you really want to be a separate business, then you also have to keep your books and your accounting and everything else separate as well. And hopefully that makes sense to everyone. Those of you that have to jump, I appreciate you being on here. Hopefully this was helpful for you, and please reach out to us and let us know if we can help in any other way. Thanks, congratulations. Okay, so property management software. I'm gonna answer that one really quickly. I use a Quicken Rental Property Manager. I've been using it for over a decade now. It's a great software. There's a couple others out there. Leo, do you know any other property management? Sorry, let me answer that. Let me back up. Quicken Rental Property Manager is a financial software, but it doesn't do property management services. So property software recommendations, Quicken could be there, but if you're talking about property management, Yardi is one. But Leo, do you know any other ones? That Build 'em is another?
Buildum's another. There's a couple of other ones there. I mean, I don't personally use them. I'm still a little bit old school in that regards. I go through Excel sheets,
Gotcha.
but those are some of the bigger ones I know.
Come on, Leo. We're trying to get the people to the next level, man. You're pulling me back to the Excel spreadsheets, man.
Hey, sometimes a little old school is good.
No, so I would say Build 'em, Quicken Rental Property Manager, and there's a couple others. You can Google them, and they are definitely out there. So there was a couple people I had a couple questions, and hopefully I can clarify this. Let's make this simple. Remove the holding company altogether. Just remove it. You don't. This is a more of an advanced technique, and this is more for something if you had like 50 of these properties, then and it's for, and hopefully I'm pronouncing this word right, anonymity. So if you want to remain anonymous, then this holding company is typically like a Delaware holding company or a Wyoming holding company, because within Wyoming, Delaware, and I believe Vegas, you cannot look up who owns the LLC. Here in Massachusetts, this is still public record, and I can figure out who owns property number one. It still provides the asset protection, but I can basically put you into our database and see that you own property 2, 3, and 4. This is a much more advanced strategy to simplify this for you. Remove the holding company. You're still going to get the same thing. Once you get to 4, 5, 6, 10 properties, then you consider adding this back in, and you kind of as an overarching entity, but it's not necessarily needed. What is needed, and what I do stress, is that you remove the holding company. You own property LLC number one. The LLC owns the property itself. That provides you with the layer of asset protection that you need, and is also going to allow you to get commercial and hard money financing as well. So hope. Yeah, people laughing at you, Leo, for sticking with the Excel spreadsheets there, right?
Haters. Excel has its use.
Will I be able to get a recording after? I don't know. We'll have to see how this comes out. Sometimes it's hit or miss. You will definitely get the slides, but I'll try to get the recordings over to you. Without the holding company, we're also at risk of losing asset protection via single member LLC. Again, I am not an attorney, so I don't want to go too deep into this, but somebody's telling me without the holding company, also at risk of losing asset protection via single member LLC. Again, I am not an attorney, so the answer, somebody else asked if we have a course on asset protection. We do not, but one of the people, we often use Anderson Business Advisors. They are, national. You can look them up on YouTube. They have a ton of free information. Anderson Business Advisors, they're great in terms of, teaching you about asset protection and everything else. I would not go down that road. I know a little bit myself, and I know what works in Massachusetts, but when you're talking about asset protection, every state has its own local laws. Within those laws, you also have examples of, entities that have been pierced by the court and everything else. So I stick with what I know in Massachusetts, and I can give you advice based on here. But when it comes to asset protection on a national level, I would advise you to check out Anderson Business Advisors and do the research about what's most useful in your local market.